Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel and this amazing video. I'm Aditya. In this video, we'll see how we can create a custom composable for Vue 3 which will help us to make API calls. So without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, so here I have a Vue 3 single page application. So it's going to be completely client-side rendered and it's just has some basic tailwind and nothing else. So basic post list component which will render the list of posts from this JSON placeholder API, and here I have the post list component here just unmounted hook where we are making an API call and then hydrating our reactive post value to render this list of posts over here, and everything here works fine. Now if you have used Nux 3, it has very powerful useFetch composable. Now that composable allows you to cache data to make API calls or any HTTP request smoothly. So in Vue 3 we don't have that, we have it in Nux 3, but let's say we have a Vue 3 function, or let's say we are using not function we are using a Vue 3 app, and here we want to have something similar to that. So how can we create our own useFetch? Now why are we creating this our own composable? Now here if you notice we are making an API call, so that's all good. But let's say we want to pass our API token, some custom headers, and also we want to make API calls on multiple, let's say, components, and we want to pass tokens and headers over there as well. So we'll be rewriting a lot of code, and also if we want to abort any API request, it's going to be again an hassle because we need to keep track of things, what's happening where, and then aborting things here and there can be a mess. Like it can create a mesh. So how we can create a composable where we will have a reusable data and also we can keep our code clean. So for that we'll be creating this useFetch composable. So to save some time, I have already written some code. So here we are importing ref from Vue because we will need some reactive values, and then we are exporting this useFetch function. It's just a default export. We are having three reactive variables here. So data that we are going to get after the API call is successful, error if there are any errors, loading state just to show like whether we are making an API call, what's happening behind the scene, etc. So just like a loading state thing. Then here we have an abort controller. I'll get to this concept when we reach that point. So what we are doing here is we are starting off with setting up the loading state to be true. Now here I will take another variable which is going to be a base URL. Now that's not going to be api.example.com, that's going to be JSON placeholder typecode.com. Now here why I have done this, because let's say I'm making API calls to just base, like just one endpoint, or not endpoint but actually just one server, and if the base URL is true, then why to keep that URL writing again and again? We can just have it as a base URL and then just pass the slug, which is this thing over here, like posts or get post whatnot. So we will have a base URL here, then we will have our base headers, because that's the main reason. Like we just want to avoid duplication of code. So whatever common things are needed, we will just encapsulate them into a useFetch hook. So base headers, that will be content type, accept, it's going to be application JSON, content type application JSON, and let's say we are passing some token. For this API you don't need a token, so that's why I'm just passing some random string. So it's not a token for this API. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check, okay, if wherever this useFetch composable is used, if there are any extra headers being passed. If they are being passed, so I'm going to create a final headers which is going to be merge of our base headers, which is going to be this thing, and whatever headers that are being passed with this options over here. Perfect. Then we will have a fetch data function. Now this date function is a very typical function which just makes a fetch API call, but one thing here is we have signal and we have the abort, that's we are returning. So what is this signal and abort? So abort controller is when it comes to client-side JavaScript, it's an inbuilt you could say a DOM API or a JavaScript API or web API. So it allows you, or this class gives you two powerful features: signal, which is going to be an object, and abort, which is going to be a function. Now signal, this object has you could say is used actually to keep track of what HTTP requests are happening from the browser side. So when a browser make a request, so this signal will keep track of that, and abort function will be used to abort those requests. Let's take an example. Let's say I'm downloading a file from some third-party API. Somehow the user wants to abort the download. So in that case we can use this abort function from the abort controller. So it will cancel all the API calls that are happening behind the scene, or all the fetch API calls, and then this signal will keep track, like as we are passing it as an option over here. So this abort function will communicate to the signal, okay, cancel this, cancel that, something like that. So these two works together. So you need to pass signal in the options and abort as a function if they want to abort anything. Now here we will use try catch block because it's going to be an async function. So we are using await over here. So we will say, okay, if this goes wrong, so if we don't get any response which is of okay, then we will just put an error saying that could not fetch data. If everything is right, we will get the JSON response. That's going to be our data.value. If again something goes wrong, let's say server side error or something in this try code, let's say we pass some wrong URL or something, like just some random things happen here. So we will catch those errors over here. And finally, we set our loading state to false. And at the end here, we are passing or returning all the parameters that we are using in this useFetch. So we are using these 3 reactive values. We are passing also this abort function if someone wants to abort the call, and this fetch data function when they want to make the fetch data or this API call or any API call. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to convert this to that. So here I'm going to first import useFetch from composable useFetch, and then here we just need to remove this and just need to do something like this. So const data, that I'm going to call it as posts error post error. You'll come to know why I'm doing this. Loading will be post loading, and useFetch, and here I just need to pass the URL like this, so / posts, and then I will have the fetch data function. So fetch data, that I'm gonna call it fetch posts, and here on mounted hook I'm just gonna call that function. So here I'm gonna say await fetch posts, and if we save this, if we go back and see if everything works fine, if we refresh this, there you go, everything works fine. Now let's add a button here to make a post request. So here I'm gonna take a button. Also we can add a loading state actually, so we could do something like this. So span, we could say v if post loading. So here we could say loading. Oh, this shouldn't be in double brackets, it should be just normal HTML. And here we could say vs, and here we can have a button at the end, and just I'm gonna add a random post. So here I'm gonna say @click add post, just to see how we can use this for post method. So here I'm gonna say function add post. Now here I'm just gonna say const data added post, then fetch data add post fetch, and here I'm going to say useFetch, method will be post, and this data that we want to add. Perfect. So if we can post it like this, and let's make this as an async function so that we can have everything synchronous. And here I'm going to say add post fetch, and then whatever value we get, we add it inside our posts, and let's see if this reflects. So to see if it reflects, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say here, let's have post sort length to just see how many posts are there actually. So if we go back over here, there are around 100 posts. If we add a new one, there is 101. And if you see, it's not added inside our data anywhere, but the length is reflected. Let's go over here, add a new one. So we are just getting the ID of that post. We are not actually getting the new post. That's why we are not seeing it over there. Let's show the ID of the posts as well somewhere. So inside the post dot view, let's do something like this, post dot ID, and let's give it some space over here, something like this. And if we go over here, so we see 93, 94 and 101, 102, 103. So it's just returning an ID. That's right, just the API thing, but actually you should get your actual response, whatever response you are expecting. So in this case, creating a resource, it should output this, source will not be really updated on the server, but yeah, it just fakes it. So that's interesting. That's all in this video. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you feel this video is worth sharing with your network, please do share with your network. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. So see you in the next video. Till the next time, goodbye.